Though you met Bailey DeVries earlier, I'd like to give just a bit more background on why she's so well suited to serve as the Associate Administrator and Head of the Office of Investment and Innovation, leading SBA's portfolio of private investment partnerships and innovation funding programs, including the Small Business Investment Company Program, or SBICs, and the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs, SBINR and STTR, America's Seed Fund. And of course, SBA's Innovation Ecosystem Support Organization development programs, the Growth Accelerator Fund Competition, and the Federal and State Technology Partnership Program. Ms. DeVries comes to the SBA after a private sector career in the asset management and defense industries, and she served in leadership and executive roles while at T. Rowe Price, Greenspring Associates, Trail Mix Ventures, and Soterra Defense. Ms. DeVries holds advanced degrees from Georgetown University, Northwestern University, and Wake Forest University, and she's a native of Chicago, but now lives with her husband and 2 daughters in Maryland. Welcome back, Bailey.
Jennifer, thank you for that kind introduction. It's amazing to work with you, and I'm just so excited about our focus on the importance of ecosystem development and having you as the leader of our ecosystem development organization that we have established within the Office of Investment and Innovation. Your work is so critical. As they always say, anything great that we accomplish, we never accomplish alone. So the relationships and the connective tissue between the entrepreneurial support organizations and the innovators are just so critical, and aligning the support of our organization with the private sector is incredibly important. So I am so thrilled that our first session to kick off the ESO Summit is this fireside chat with 2 incredible women who are rowing in the same direction with us and have been doing so for a very long time, for them to share their amazing experience and perspective so we can draft off of the experiences that they've had and their key learnings. So it's such a pleasure that I'm excited to introduce our guests and have this great conversation. So with that, pleased to introduce Allie Burns. Allie serves as the CEO at Village Capital, and she brings more than 16 years of experience working with entrepreneurs and innovators at the intersection of technology and social change. She has also held positions at Discovery, AOL, and Atlas Venture, among others. And also joining us today is Kelly Burton. Kelly is a political scientist, serial entrepreneur, and change agent who leads with passion, purpose, and vision. She is the CEO of Black Innovation Alliance, a national coalition made up of 65 Black-led organizations which support more than 300,000 innovators of color across the country. So welcome, Allie and Kelly. So with that,
thank you, Bailey.
Great. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get our conversation started because I have a feeling there is a lot of great insight that you're going to share, and I want to make sure we maximize our time together. So pleased to kick off things with this discussion, which is all about connection and partnership. I'd like us to start by just having you share a bit about each of your organizations individually and also how you met.
I'll go first. I'll jump in and I'll kick it to Allie. So thank you so much, Bailey, for that introduction. Black Innovation Alliance is a national coalition of innovator support organizations, or ISOs. And these are organizations that support tech founders, business owners, and creative technologists who are working with emerging media. Today, there are 89 organizations that are a part of Black Innovation Alliance. They're in 33 cities across the country and support approximately 300,000 entrepreneurs and innovators of color. So for us at BIA, our work is really about creating the sort of ecosystem that is necessary for Black innovators and entrepreneurs to thrive. And so I will kick it over to Allie, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about how we met.
Thanks, Kelly. So I'm Allie Burns, CEO of Village Capital. We're an organization that's focused on unlocking capital for, and I mean both social, financial, and other types of capital for early stage entrepreneurs who are solving major environmental, economic, and social challenges. And what underlies all of our work is a lens of equity. We're really focused on identifying and supporting those entrepreneurs who have been historically excluded from the early stage investment ecosystem and completely underestimated, which is really how Kelly and I ended up meeting. We've been doing work in the inclusive entrepreneurship space collectively through other endeavors as well. And so we knew Kelly and some of the other folks that came together to create BIA right around the time we were thinking about how to evolve our own work in supporting entrepreneur support organizations. And so it was really perfect timing to co-develop the resource program, which I know we'll talk about later, and collaborate in a new way, as BIA was really emerging as a startup organization, and Village Capital had been around for just about a decade at the time that we met. So Kelly, feel free to fill in any gaps I've missed there.
Yeah, it was kismet that you all had this concept that you had worked through, and we were just kind of coming online. And the team reached out to say, we're working on this thing, and we think that there's alignment. Can you check it out? And let's have a conversation and see where it goes. And now we're 2 cohorts in and thinking through long-term sustainability of the effort. So it's been an exciting journey.
So exciting. I mean, you have an incredible partnership. Today is so much about learning and sharing insights. As I mentioned before, we want to be able to draft off experience and be able to speed up things for many other organizations. So could you expand a bit on how the partnership has evolved over the course of running these 2 cohorts of the resource program, and anything that you've learned, so things to take away from those experiences, so that way other organizations who might want to collaborate in a similar way may be able to draft off that information.
Sure. I can start with a little bit of the history of how we got to that call that we made to Kelly to say, hey, we have this thing we're working on, and let's collaborate, to share a little bit of history of how we even got to supporting other ESOs. So of course, Village Capital is an ESO ourselves. We've supported 1,500 entrepreneurs over the last 12 plus years. We've learned a lot of lessons along the way, but we were getting a lot of calls from local ecosystems saying, hey, would you bring a Village Capital program here? And so we launched something called VilCap Communities that was really about how to help individual entrepreneur support organizations or ecosystem builders bring in the most contextualized version of our own curriculum into their communities. And we learned a lot from that initiative. And particularly, we're interested in ways we could help build capacity. And to your point, Bailey, about speeding things up, how could we speed things up for some of these local ecosystem builders based on our own experiences and frankly, the things that we've done wrong, as well as how could we use our national and global presence to be a facilitator to social capital, just like we're working to unlock for entrepreneurs, for these entrepreneur support organizations to create faster connections to funders and other resources that they need in order to build their own, which they're building a business as well, build their own businesses. And so we created and iterated on this initiative for a couple of years and recognized that one of the biggest needs within the United States was really to focus on these incredible ecosystem builders that are sitting at a local and regional level, know their communities exceptionally well, but sometimes don't have the visibility or amplification that they need in order to get, again, access to the resources that they need. So as we were seeing this dynamic come together, we said we really want to focus an initiative that is to support these local ecosystem builders led by and focused on supporting entrepreneurs who are from these historically excluded backgrounds, Black and Indigenous people of color, and women-led businesses as well, and particularly the intersection of both. And so we reached out to BIA. We knew they were forming as an organization and thought that there would be an incredible collaboration, had a huge amount of respect for Kelly and the team that she was pulling together. And so that's how it started. Kelly, I don't know if you want to start with how it's evolved, and I can jump in.
Sure. I think it's really important to mention that we called out the elephant in the room from like the very beginning. There is this kind of long-standing challenge within the space where white-led organizations will receive resources to implement programs in communities of color. And oftentimes those programs don't turn out so great because they don't necessarily have the cultural competency and the context necessary to execute those programs well. And so kind of going into the conversation, we said, okay, so how can we not, replicate what we are already seeing out there in this space and make sure that this is a very kind of reciprocal and generative partnership that really centers racial equity. And so we started with that conversation, like in an ideal world, in a really healthy collaboration between an established white-led organization and a startup Black-led organization, like what could this partnership look like? And we started with, I think it was a statement on racial equity to explicitly say, like when we say we are filtering this work through a racial equity lens, what does that mean? What does that look like? How are all the ways that this could go left? And how do we get ahead of that, right? And for us, getting ahead of that meant saying, let's always keep channels of communication open. Let's expect that we're going to experience conflict at some point in this collaboration. Let's just expect it so that when it shows up, we're not shocked or surprised. We can access that open channel of communication to really talk through what the challenges and obstacles are. And so at various points where we were experiencing difficulties, we were able to say, okay, can we pause and just recalibrate to just ensure that we're still aligning with who we said we were going to be as a collaboration, as a partnership at the outset of this venture. And so, Ali, maybe I'm happy to kick it to you to maybe lift up some specific ways that has kind of played out.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, Kelly is my conflict management guru. I have such respect for the way that you proactively think about how to navigate that. And I think that it is a really important thing to say transparently in any partnership. So as the folks who are participating in the summit are thinking about collaborations, knowing that like it's not going to be perfect and that's okay. And so that was such an important thing that that we brought to the table together to say, this is not going to be perfect. We're going to learn and have touch points along the way to examine where something might be challenging. So the way that the partnership has evolved from a programmatic standpoint is that we started with sort of taking a cohort-based model, and that's still the basic model that we're using, a cohort-based model, sort of an accelerator for accelerators. And developing a curriculum based on what we thought was most appropriate for these organizations. And I think we learned a lot in the first go round from the entrepreneur support organizations in terms of their specific needs and maybe some of the things that they didn't need our support on, and really tried to zero in when we evolved to the next program on things like fundraising and operations, which were clearly and building a business model, which were clearly the needs, and then figuring out which of our organizations brought the expertise and experience to the table, and not just saying, just because VILCAP has done these things or BIA is doing these things, like who on our teams can we really leverage in order to bring the right expertise and experience to each of the programs. The way that we're evolving now is that we actually decided not to launch a third cohort right away after the first two cohorts, and actually to take a moment and say, what have we learned? How can we continue to build support for the 23 organizations that have already participated in the resource program? How do we better assess and meet their needs? Because there aren't a lot of long tail support programs either for entrepreneurs or for these ESOs. And how do we create an institutional foundation for future cohorts? And I really have to give Kelly the acknowledgement for really thinking about how do we make sure that we are not running too fast, but also meeting the needs of these many organizations, as BIA's research has shown, that are coming online month over month, really. So that's programmatically how things are evolving.
Wonderful. I just have to commend you both for the intentionality and thought. As they say, right? An ounce of planning saves a pound of pain later. So that intentionality and planning can pay off dividends, but also just the recognition and also creating the space for just diverse ideas, which often leads to sometimes disagreement, right? But disagreement doesn't necessarily mean conflict. You can disagree and you can do it with dignity and respect. And if anything, those disagreements are often what causes us to innovate and have better ideas. It's something that we encourage on our team, for everybody to speak up and have a voice, and to challenge ideas. And love that you are fostering a culture within your partnership where that can happen, because that just pushes us forward. So really, really great to hear that. There's so much that you have accomplished. And Allie, I do want to turn to you for a second and talk about the fact that Village Capital was a winner of the Small Business Administration's Growth Accelerator Fund competition in 2016. Commend you on that. And you have a unique way of determining how startups in your accelerator cohorts get funded. Could you talk a bit about that, and how that has also evolved since that award in 2016?
Yeah. Well, I will say that this prompted me to go back into the vault, and I found a video that we had actually put together to support our application for that award. And it was fun to kind of go take a look back. This was right around actually the time that I joined Village Capital. So Village Capital is called Village Capital, borrowed from the village banking model in microfinance. And that's essentially when a village will get together to make a decision on who would receive capital amongst a group of essentially entrepreneurs. And the founding of Village Capital is really a question: is what would happen if we put a group of entrepreneurs together and had them decide who should receive investment? It really flips the power dynamic on its head and has generated a completely different set of results than when you look at sort of the average early stage investment portfolio. So essentially, we put together groups of entrepreneurs in cohorts. They are solving a similar challenge. So whether they're trying to build new solutions to respond to climate change, or solutions to help build economic mobility within a specific region. And we provide them with training on how to look at their own business and their cohort businesses like an investor. And then at the end of the process, they actually select who receives investment. There's the whole deeper dive I could do on that, but that's the short version. And we've run this process, probably close to 200 times. We've provided funding to 120 peer-selected companies. And when we look at a subset of those companies have received investment from our affiliated fund, about 111 of those. That portfolio is far more diverse than the average seed stage portfolio. 50%, nearly 50% of the companies are women-led businesses. Within the US, nearly 30% are led by people of color. And that is, of course, much higher than the average. Would we like it to be higher? Absolutely. Can we always do better? Absolutely. And we're excited about what we've learned through the process and how the process has address sort of traditional issues of both implicit and explicit bias that exist in the early stage investment decision-making process. We have some research around specifically the gender component based on the amount of data that we have available. But I do have a thesis that that research applies to other forms of exclusion as well. So that's the story of how we select our entrepreneurs for investment.
I just realized I was on mute still right there. Thank you for sharing that, Allie. That's wonderful. So Kelly, can I turn to you for a second?
Sure.
Okay. So I was so grateful to meet you a few months back. We were so lucky to host BIA at our SBA headquarters. This was back in April. I feel like time is flying. So at that time, you had helped launch the Congressional Caucus on Black Innovation and announce the Decade of Black Innovation, and just applaud you for that tremendous and wonderful effort. And you had such a wonderful coalition of folks with you when you came just to our offices. And I know that we didn't even meet everybody. But one of the things that stuck with me from that meeting were the challenges voiced by members around the lack of operational support and capacity building for ecosystem builders, where most funding seems to be focused more on programming. So would love to just lift up for the audience any good examples of positive movement towards capacity building. So let's be focused on the positive and the progress rather than dwell on the past. So, and you're doing a lot of good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Bailey. And that that was a tremendous experience for our members. And there have been so many ripple effects to come out of that. So thanks so much to the SBA for your support and your willingness to support like at the last minute, because it all came together very, very quickly, which was incredibly exciting. And you're absolutely correct. There is this huge challenge within this space, especially this emergent space of entrepreneur support around directing operational dollars to the organizations that are supporting entrepreneurs and innovators on the ground. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I think largely, and this is something that philanthropy has struggled with for a long time, that's really normalizing operating support. There's a whole lot there. And we can talk about that, could be a whole conference to itself. But what we have seen is for BIA, we created history twice in 2022. The first is the caucus launch. The launch of the Congressional Caucus on Black Innovation. It was the first time anything like that had ever been done, with a specific focus on Black innovation and entrepreneurs on Capitol Hill. So it was huge, right? Big, 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 big deal. The second time BIA made history was at Web Summit this past November, where we had an opportunity to do an activation on the floor of Web Summit, which is arguably the largest tech conference in the world. And that activation was focused on Black entrepreneurship. That was the very first time there was a floor activation focused on Black entrepreneurs at Web Summit. Historic. The only reason we were able to move forward with either is because we had general operating dollars in the bank, right? So through the generous support of the eBay Foundation, we received a $1 million investment in our work in general operating support. And so when Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, who was one of the co-chairs of the caucus, really moved with lightning speed to spin up the caucus kind of based on our advocacy, we were able to activate our membership to subsidize their travel, to support their lodging in order to, bring a force to Capitol Hill as part of that launch. And it was huge. I mean, we packed the place out. There were at least 200 people at the events throughout the day. So, the only reason we were able to do Web Summit in force is because we had dollars in the bank. The challenge with programmatic dollars is that when you apply for a grant opportunity, there's usually a 12-month to 18-month kind of lag between when you pitch it and when you get the dollars. And so if you're trying to be iterative, if you're trying to be agile, if you're trying to capitalize on a moment, programmatic dollars are never going to enable you to do that. The only thing that's going to enable you to do that is trust-based relationships, trust-based investments from folks who see the work that you're doing and say, I trust you to make good choices around how this money is deployed. So I'm going to give you this check for you to in turn do good. Now, we'll continue to take the programmatic dollars because that's just where the field is, but we're going to continue to advocate for the importance of general operating support as well as capacity building support, which is more about helping to build the kind of capabilities of our leaders and their organizations.
Thank you for that, Kelly. I couldn't agree with you more. I think trust and alignment are everything. And I think sometimes we see that tendency for things often to be so specific and all focused on the programmatic elements. And there's a lot of good there, right? But at the same time, if we can have that trust, then we don't need to be overly prescriptive and manage towards, that rare case when people are not being good actors. We should have faith in the fact that there's a shared mission and wanting to do good. The more trust we can have and the better alignment we can have, the more we can do, and the more we can focus on catalyzing those relationships and the capacity building within the organization, so that way they can be sustained and they can operate their programming.
Right. Love it.
I'd love to turn to Allie again for a minute. And Allie, I'd love to hear, how did Village Capital start getting involved in supporting other accelerators, right? Like we love what you're doing. I think we'll all hear more about how much we love it across the day. And Administrator Guzman alluded in her speech to some of the innovative ideas that everyone will see in our upcoming Growth Accelerator Fund competition that seeks to catalyze more of these partnerships. So just would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier a little bit about how we got to the partnership with BIA and the resource program, which is part of this story, but really it came from seeing a systematic gap in the ecosystems surrounding the entrepreneurs that we're supporting. We're working particularly in spaces that are generally more nascent, often more ignored by maybe the mainstream early stage investment ecosystem, although that has certainly changed, particularly in the last couple of years as people realize the critical importance of funding entrepreneurs who are trying to solve our biggest challenges of the day and looking to the entrepreneurs with lived experience with those challenges to solve them. But certainly we were seeing just really a lack of systematic support for some of these organizations and folks who were starting ESOs because they didn't have access as entrepreneurs to the resources that they needed and said, hey, it's another entrepreneurial solution, right? Going in and saying, like, I'm going to start an organization that can fill a gap that I didn't have access to when I was starting and building my company. And so we were seeing this happening pretty regularly around the country and around the world. Both on the Village Capital side, and prior to my joining Village Capital, I was with Steve Case and Rise of the Rest and seeing a lot of this as well. And they've done incredible work as well to fill in some of these ecosystem gaps. But really it started with the desire to help fill ecosystem gaps and speed up the progress of these organizations that were getting started. And so that's evolved over time into a number of things that we've created for capacity building for ESOs.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thanks, Allie. And yes, Rise of the Rest, another organization just doing tremendous work here and contributing to the ecosystem development community. Really, it takes a village. So we're all in this together. So I know we are coming down to only 4 minutes, and I'm getting a nice reminder on that. But I think it's important that we ask the question, what should we be talking about? What have we not raised, and taking things perhaps a little bit more broad, but maybe more specific, and have you give some advice in terms of things that you think might be helpful to ecosystem builders who are out there looking to build stronger ties to other groups in the innovation ecosystem space.
Kelly, do you want to go first?
No, I'll jump in. In terms of what do we need more of, I would say we need more investment in networks, in coalitions. That's really where the power lies. At BIA, we're very focused on power building, which is necessary, especially as the winds blow, and we don't necessarily know where the winds are blowing. And at certain points, the people are kind of more in position to have agency, and at other points, less so. But if we're able to build coalitions, if we're able to build networks and really resource those networks in ways that they're able to have amplification power and achieve meta effects and ripple effects, that's incredibly powerful. So that's what I say, that we have to have more conversations and more investment in networks. And the other thing that I'll say in terms of ecosystem builders, a piece of advice: find community. You don't have to do it alone. It's very, very hard because this is an emergent space. Most people don't even know what an ecosystem builder is. So I would say, at BIA, we're focused on Black leaders, Black organizations. We have open membership twice a year. NBIA is another network. eShip, Kaufman Foundation, Startup Champions. Find your community, because it's hard, but it doesn't have to be that hard.
And I will plus one to Kelly's point on collaborations and how do we incentivize more collaborations like ours. So we really appreciate the spotlight on the work that we're doing together here. And I think we need more of these types of partnerships. And then I'll give a very brief practical plug, but it is a plug, but also practical advice. Check out our ESO Diagnostic for those who are ESO leaders. We've created a tool that will help you sort of self-assess your progress as an entrepreneur support organization based on the work that we've been doing through Resource and other programs that we've been running to support ESOs. It's on abaca.app, or if you just Google Village Capital ESO Diagnostic, you should find it. If you don't, then I'll talk to our SEO folks. And it will allow you to really self-assess. We had our entire team take it as an organization, and it generated a really amazing conversation about what we need to work on, what milestones we need to work on to improve our own work. And so I hope you will all find value, those of you who are leading ESOs, in that tool as well.
Allie and Kelly, thank you so much for those remarks and just this wonderful conversation. I find it just tremendously inspiring, and the work that you're doing to connect community, to connect ecosystem builders and support entrepreneurs is just absolutely fantastic. And it's a great model for the change that we would like to intentionally see throughout the country and in local communities. And I think that's another big thing to think about, that sometimes these networks and these partnerships are national, right? They're on an industry segment or a demographic group or a social group, but other times it's about connecting place-based communities with more national networks and capabilities to bring them into the overall ecosystem. So thank you for the great conversation. I personally enjoyed the time together. Thank you, Allie and Kelly. And thank you also to all of our viewers today. Stick around. We've got many more insights to share and just a tremendous lineup. And I am going to turn the rest of the day over to my amazing colleague and leader, Jennifer Shee, to take us through more wonderful discussions. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone. I'm Jamila Corbett. Welcome to the SBA Innovation Ecosystem Summit. If you're just now tuning in, you have the opportunity right here to fellowship with other ecosystem builders like yourself. And as a reminder, if you need closed captions, go ahead and click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Thank you so much to Bailey, Allie, and Kelly. Everybody in the chat, let's give our panel an emoji round of applause since we're here virtually. This is how we're going to do it today. Don't forget to say hi to us in the chat if you're just tuning in. Connect with each other, share your learnings. I love this for y'all. I see you engaging with each other. Let's keep this energy going throughout the day. You can also share your highlights with us from this conference on social media by using the hashtag ESO Summit 22. I see your emojis. All right, we're going to be back in a jiffy for our next panel, which is a primer on federal funding for entrepreneur support organizations. See you soon.